similar opinions, and we'll see how the debate goes. So I have Alan and then I have Sinead. Alan?
Just, I was going to say that we neither serve king nor Kaiser as a starting point, in the sense that we are here today looking back to the likes of Liam Mellows and James Connolly. And, you know, even though Eoin nearly ruled me out another one saying we shouldn't ask these people what they would do in this case, I do have to say, you know, everyone in this room would admire James Connolly. Everyone from a starting point. And you do have to ask yourself, what would James Connolly do now? And you look at where we're heading within the European Union. We have a neutrality in this country, and it's a treasured neutrality. Eoin didn't touch on it. You look where the European Union is heading. It wants to be a super state. And when I say compete with the other super states in the world, it means compete with them, and there goes our neutrality. We are respected throughout the world because of our neutrality. Our peacekeepers who travel throughout the world have that extra level of safety on them because we're not deemed as an empire belonging to any empire. And when you look at the troubles we faced in 2008, which in our history is the biggest depression since 1929, when we looked to our fellow Europeans and we looked at democracy itself now is actually up for question, because why are people heading toward Trumps, towards Le Pen's, towards Le Farage's? Is because our democratic system is failing. Now that's very dangerous when people head towards the likes of these people. It's very dangerous because I look at even Obama. There's a big protest movement against Trump, and rightly so. But I look at Obama. Obama delivers speeches better than George Clooney. But in reality, he didn't deliver. You ask the people from Detroit, the Detroit Water Brigade that came over here, you ask them, did Obama deliver for them? No, he didn't. So I would protest as much against Trump as I would against Obama, because democracy itself is failing throughout the world. And basically, we look at when the crisis hit, we have exceptional people as MEPs now in Europe. We have Lynn Boylan, we have Nessa Childers, we have Luke Ming-Flanagan, we have Mark Carthy. All exceptional, capable people in Europe to represent us. When the TTIP agreement was up for discussion, they were all locked outside the room. Lynn couldn't even go in. Ming-Flanagan couldn't even go in. That is not democracy. We belong now to a dictatorship. And we need to get out of that dictatorship. Our own democracy is hard enough with the guy we have in charge now. And it's very hard trying to get young people involved in this party as it is. But we need to wake young people up. And I'll give you one example of it. And we talked about housing earlier on. I grew up in the 70s in Lourdes Flats in Dublin's inner city. My family's circumstances changed 3 times. I was able to move 3 times into social housing from one place to another. I moved forward, and I always had a home over my head. And I moved forward into the 80s, had another recession. Myself as a hospital porter was able to go out and buy a home and put it over my head. I look at my daughter now, who's a professional. She had a better job than I have, and she has to live at home. She can't afford a house. She can't even afford to rent. Now, it's the first generation that we've seen go backwards. We used to sit down at our kitchen tables with our fathers and our grandfathers, and they used to point out to us, guys, you don't know how lucky yous are. We're actually now, my daughter is sitting down at my kitchen table and saying, you don't know how lucky you were, because her circumstances has worsened under the EU. And I really feel that someone in this country, someone as big, we need one of the big parties to get this question and get this debate out there and going forward. Eoin is right. We should put the gun back to our European non-partners who abandoned us in our hour of need, who made homelessness worse, who made emigration worse, who made a health crisis worse. We need to point the gun back at their heads and say that if we don't get a proper deal, if we don't see that democratic reform where people like Juncker stands for election, they stand for election before me. I should get my chance to vote for this guy. I don't. And when the crisis hit, did we see Lynn or Luke or any of these great people we have in Parliament making changes to better their circumstances? No. What we seen on our televisions was Sarkozy and Merkel meeting and deciding everything. That's a dictatorship. We need out of that dictatorship. And if you're ever to have a united Ireland, I want a united Ireland that's sovereign. And when we mean sovereign, everything that we would like to see in this country will be decided by the people within it. Trade. You look at trade, the free movement of people and goods. Go to Newry and try to buy a car and see how free that movement of goods is. So the good things we were promised when we joined this union wasn't delivered. So I hope to God a party as influential as Sinn Féin will change its view and start to advocate exit out of, or at least the conversation about exit out of the EU.
Okay. Thanks, Alan. Thanks for that. Sinead? Sinead?
Hi, Eoin, thank you very much for coming down. First of all, you've raised some really good points, particularly around trade and our currency and the implications that that's had. And I'm not going to disagree with you on any of them. But I would be interested in your comments on how Ireland has been influenced, I think for the good, when it comes to how we treat our minorities in this country, civil rights across the board because of our participation in the EU. And I'm thinking particularly the late 70s, Mary Robinson went over and she did an awful lot of work on women's pension rights. And then you move on into the 80s and the 90s, and Senator Norris went over, and that came about then the decriminalisation of homosexuality. And then you can go to last week, and I really don't think Enda Kenny would have stood up and recognised Travers as an ethnic group if it was not for our participation in the EU. I don't think the political will would have been there if we didn't have that outside influence on us. So I wanted to make that comment because I don't think the EU has been all bad for us, to be honest with you. It's forced a spotlight on, we are naturally an inwardly looking country, and that's where we don't have a good track record when it comes to taking care of people and taking care of marginalised people. And I think the EU has forced us to look at ourselves and examine what way we operate in here. But maybe the time has come now for us to move to the next stage, that we don't have to be corrected by the EU. And so my question is, I suppose, do you think now we're mature enough as a country, and the way we treat our minorities and our disadvantaged, that we could credibly leave the EU? And I mean this as a proud Republican, as a proud Irish person, to say, can we actually, as a country, can we be trusted to look after everybody equally? When in the past we haven't, and it has taken a spotlight shone from Europe to make sure that we've made the adjustments necessary here. That's it. Remark.
Thanks, Sinead. Can I go back to you on those points?
Yeah, well, I'll take the second one because I think those are very important questions. We often talk about Labour must wait. Well, perhaps a more important question is, must women wait? And the answer equally is no. Women cannot wait. And the rights of women, the rights of various changes in societal attitudes are absolutely central to a civilised society. And your points are valid. We made advances on equal pay, on the right to, not that there is fully equal pay, but we made advances on equal pay, on the right to work, like the famous marriage bar being dropped and so on. These were done in the context of our European membership. But the important thing, I think, really is that these are issues which Irish society on. We have to make sure that these are continually presented and that these are the areas of battle. And one of the things for which I think Sinn Féin can rightly be proud of itself is its very strong advancement of women. Because if women are in leading positions and in advanced positions, these particular concerns relating to women's rights, to women's equality, cannot be pushed aside if the leading people are actually there inspired by those things. So your question at the end of it, are we mature enough to be able to do the right thing? My answer to that is yes, because while we've seen a whole process of engagements, of activity, and of people looking for more. And the question is, these may well have been a context which existed abroad, but they have also been taken now, I think, thoroughly integrated into Irish society. And I think one of the points which Eoin made in his contribution earlier, Ireland was not necessarily so backwardly conservative a country in the 1920s or in that period. I mean, don't forget, Irish women were out there right at the forefront campaigning on the suffrage issue. And the same women who played such a key part in that were women who played such a key part in the War of Independence itself. And we know the names, we know the people like Constance Markovich, Helena Maloney, Mary Comerford, some of whom I've had the privilege to meet and know Mary Comerford, Helena Maloney and so on, and Sheila Humphreys. And these were the people who were there. So that tradition of militant women who were able to fight for the advancement of women's rights and fight for the advancement of a context in which all of that can only be made real, an independent Irish state, that is our tradition. And I have absolute confidence that young Irish women today will not accept the same type of I do believe there's a big struggle still to go on, but I'm absolutely confident that young women can do that. So I don't think that what I would have to recognise that the EU was the context in which many of these things came about, because debates had happened in other countries in front of us, but they've happened in our country as well. The idea of going back to a marriage bar is an impossible consideration. The idea of going back to a bland acceptance of a glass ceiling. It's not that glass ceiling isn't there, but that these are things which it is challengeable right across the system. And I think that, in a sense, as I said, brings back into life our own traditions, which are there right in the fight for independence. And just one sort of smaller point then in relation to what Alan was saying, the issues of democracy, I think, are very important. Democracy is about people being in charge of the decisions which affect them. A decision is something for the Irish people to take, for Irish women to demand that the Irish people as a whole take in relation to the liberation of women and their freedom from discrimination and from unequal treatment and all the rest of it. But the parallel to that is the integration into a system which, for all its talk of peace, is actually a system based on war. I have a little piece here in front of me. At the Bratislava summit of September 2016, the 27 leaders of the EU decided to give a new impetus to the European external security and defence plan. In a challenging geopolitical environment, the EU cooperation on external security and defence will be strengthened. That's not a peace programme, that's a war programme. And when we see how that operates, we realise that this is the process to which, through Partnership for Peace, we're not full members of NATO, but we're involved in NATO. We're not part of these war plans, but Shannon Airport is used to let the stuff go through. We bear a moral responsibility for the murders which are committed in the mass scale in Iraq and these other countries, because we allow Shannon Airport to go and the renditions and the tortures. So all of these questions are, in a sense, interrelated. And it's certainly, I would agree with you on this point, it is not and never can be allowed to be a question of women being told to wait. On the contrary, the more assertive Irish women are in demanding their rights, the stronger is Irish national democracy as a whole, and the more we move forward. And we move forward equally north and south, because the same principles are involved, and that what we need to say to the people in the north, particularly the Protestant people from a unionist background, the purpose of Brexit is not to strengthen Britishness, because Britain doesn't give a damn about you either, as you will soon find out when budget issues are discussed. The purpose is that It's the people together taking control of the resources of our country with full equality between Catholic and Protestant, between English speaker and Irish speaker, between men and women, between gay and straight, between all the various elements, that everyone will be an equal part of a genuine, and that's what our republic is. When Wolfe Tone said, I want to replace the denominations of Catholic, Protestant and Dissenter by the common name of Irishmen, it was that we would all be one, whatever our origins, whether they were of Gaelic in the past, whether they were Scots settlers, whether they were English, whether they be Polish, African or whatever, people who live and integrate and contribute and build our society, we are all part of one. And I think that's where the issue of women's rights is really quite frontal in leading the way to achieve those things, and for the role of Irish women, Michelle O'Neill, Mary Lou MacDonald and so on, as figureheads for that leadership role. I think that's critically important and very much to be praised.
Thanks, Eoin. I have 3 more people have indicated. Now, is there anybody else? Because I'll take these 3 together and then come back to Eoin and we can close at that. So I have Padder, Noel and Eoin. So Padder?
Mille Vegas, Fishin, Honest and Willows, Conway Rock, or ATM, because come on, it's been for Roger, Kadisha. The EU, as it's currently constructed, is anti-Republican and it's anti-self-determination. There's no way that decisions in the EU will ever be made primarily for the benefit of the Irish people. We will always be secondary or in third place with regards to the target for a particular decision. And if you even look at the housing crisis that we had up to 2007, if you like, there were a number of different reasons for that. But one of the reasons was that we had an interest rate which we didn't control. And that allowed for the bubble to continue to increase unabated. Had we had control over that interest rate, we probably would have had an extra tool at least to dampen down that particular housing bubble. And then on the other side of it, you articulate very correctly the manner in which the EU is preventing us then dealing with the other side of the housing crisis as well. And I also read there a few years ago that the transfer of money in our banking crisis was similar to the transfer of wealth at the time of the plantations out of the island of Ireland, and that kind of really puts it into perspective. And the fact that this country, this state, owes about 200 billion euros, 218 billion euros as a result, partly because of that, is testimony to the cost of the EU to ourselves. One of the difficulties is with this is politically, once you start to articulate a reason, to go down the route that you're espousing there is the cost of it. So, well, I actually think personally that the euro is probably in bigger trouble than the EU, and that there's such a tension within the euro that it's not going to last anyways. But if any of our political representatives are on the show and someone says, well, Patter, what's the cost of your view of getting out of the euro? What's the cost of your view of getting out of the EU? It's impossible to quantify that. And while we are very ideologically minded in this room, most people in the state vote on the basis of their wallet. They actually vote on the basis of whether they can feed their families and pay for a roof over their head, etc. And they do want to know the costs of particular political decisions. So maybe with regards to addressing that. And then the other question is, there are needs for some level of cross-European cooperation. And, the environmental crisis that the planet is heading into, Sinead mentioned some of the progressive effects of the EU previously. And one of the progressive effects of the EU currently brings laggards with it on the environmental journey that we're on. So, is it possible then to build some level of European cooperation? And how do you deal with that big question? What is the cost of that decision?
Thanks, Padder. Thanks for that. Noel?
Oh, thank you. Thanks very much, Owen. That was, as always, was excellent. But I think maybe you may have left out one important part. Issues didn't take a CETA. don't think it's a factor then. But anyway, for me, with the European Union, the main question is the democratic question. I always come back to the democratic question. And the European Union is not only is it undemocratic, it's anti-democratic. And I was writing down a few notes because I think maybe sometimes we need to